She poured her life savings into her daughter's dream cafe. But when the staff kicked her out like a stranger, she didn't yell. She made one phone call that shut the whole place down. You ever build something so carefully, brick by brick, only to have someone walk in later and act like you were never part of it? Charlene Drayton wasn't flashy. She didn't need to be. At 62, she wore soft cotton dresses, kept her hair in neat coils, and moved with the kind of patience only life could teach. She wasn't loud, but her presence filled a room. Folks listened when she spoke, not because she demanded it, but because what she said always mattered. After nearly 40 years working as a pediatric nurse in Durham, Charlene packed her things, cashed out a chunk of her retirement savings, and moved 3 hours south to Columbia, South Carolina. Not for beaches or leisure. No, she came for her daughter. Simone Hallberg was her only child. Bold, driven, sharp as a tack. Where Charlene was quiet, Simone could command a room. They were different, but connected by something deeper. Food. Not just eating it, but the stories that lived inside every recipe. The gumbo Charlene used to make during hurricane season. The peach cobbler her mother baked from bruised fruit during tough years. The collards slow-cooked with smoked turkey necks on Sundays. That was the dream. A place where tradition met creativity. A boutique cafe where soul food wasn't buried in grease, but elevated, thoughtful, fresh, and rooted in something real. They found a tiny storefront off Rosewood Drive, just a few blocks from the university. The space had potential. Scuffed up hardwood floors, outdated light fixtures, and a kitchen that needed everything replaced. Simone was nervous, but Charlene had already seen past the mess. She pulled out her notepad, drew up a plan, and went to work. She handled licensing. She talked to the health inspector. She negotiated the lease when the landlord tried to raise the deposit. She bought used kitchen equipment from a retired chef in Charleston. She even painted the damn walls herself, mustard yellow, just the way her grandmother's kitchen looked in 1963. Simone handled the branding. She came up with the name, Hallberg House. It sounded sleek, modern. Charlene thought it was a bit cold, but she didn't say much. This was Simone's time to shine. Charlene wasn't there for glory. She was there to make sure her daughter never had to fight the way she did. When the cafe opened, it was slow at first. A few curious students wandered in for cornbread waffles and matcha lattes. Word started spreading. By the third month, the brunch line wrapped around the corner. Instagram foodies raved about the lavender fried chicken. Local reporters wrote glowing reviews. And just like that, Hallberg House became the new it spot. At first, Simone insisted Charlene be at every tasting, every staff meeting. "People trust you," she said. "You bring heart to this place," Charlene smiled. She liked helping the new line cooks find their rhythm, liked showing them how to tell when the sweet potatoes were overboiled just by the smell. She'd sit with guests at the corner table, telling stories about where certain dishes came from. It felt right. But success does strange things, and when it started to change Simone, Charlene noticed. Quietly, carefully. But she noticed. By month 6, Hallberg House was on fire. Not literally, of course, but you couldn't drive past it on a weekend without seeing a line of people snapping pictures of their shrimp and grits, or balancing cornbread muffins on fancy ceramic plates. One local blogger called it a soulful revolution in Southern cuisine. Another compared Simone to a young Carla Hall with better branding. Simone loved the attention. She started dressing differently. Sleek jumpsuits, custom aprons embroidered with her initials, heels in the kitchen. She was doing interviews, live streams, even talking about a second location. Charlene cheered her on. She really did. But it was like watching someone you love drift away while pretending they're still standing right next to you. The staff began to change too. At first, they were mostly local, some kids from Benedict College, a few folks from the neighborhood who knew how to cook and needed the work. They respected Charlene, called her Miss C, asked her to taste the grits before they went out. But as the place gained traction, Simone brought in new people. Young, ambitious. People who had culinary degrees and big plans. People who weren't from around there. They didn't know Charlene, didn't ask. One of them, Gage, a 23-year-old sous chef from Vermont, called her ma'am and asked her to stay out of the prep area. She laughed it off. For a while. Simone started making little comments. "You don't have to come every Thursday, Mom." Or, "We're trying to give it a more polished feel. Less homey, more high-end." Charlene would smile and nod, then go home and sit on the edge of her bed wondering where she'd gone wrong. She wasn't bitter. She'd just disappeared. Slowly. Quietly. Like a light fading. One morning she came in and her favorite stool near the espresso machine was gone, replaced with a modern wire chair that looked like it came from a furniture catalogue. The kitchen smelled different, less garlic, more lemon zest. The cornbread had a new twist. Saffron. Charlene never used saffron a day in her life. She tried to talk to Simone, but her daughter would say things like, "This is what growth looks like," or "It's a new chapter, Mama." Charlene would nod. But in her heart, something didn't sit right. This wasn't growth. It felt like erasure. And then came Declan Frey. Simone hired him as general manager. He was sharp, always dressed like he was on his way to a magazine shoot. Rolled sleeves, slim tie, brown leather shoes that probably cost more than Charlene's grocery bill. He talked fast, moved fast, made decisions faster. Inventory systems, branding consultants, customer feedback metrics. He had charts and apps for everything. Charlene watched him from a distance, arms crossed, lips pressed. She didn't trust fast talkers. Still, she kept coming every week. Brought baked goods, helped slice vegetables, chatted with old regulars who remembered her name even if the staff didn't. She'd wipe tables without being asked. She never made a fuss, until the tension got too loud to ignore. One Wednesday, she overheard Declan talking to a new hostess by the walk-in cooler. "Charlene's sweet, but she slows things down. We've got a streamlined service. Simone said we need to keep the front clean of distractions." Distractions. That word sat heavy in Charlene's chest. She told herself not to read into it. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe she'd misheard. But she hadn't. She knew what she heard. She didn't say anything to Simone that day. She went home, watered her plants, and made a tray of sweet potato muffins like she always did. But the smile she wore while peeling those potatoes, it wasn't the same anymore. And when Saturday came, Charlene showed up, just like always, but this time, something felt different in the air the moment she stepped through that back door. Charlene pulled into the alley behind Hallberg House just before 9 a.m., same as she had for months. The back door, usually propped open with a brick, was shut tight. She balanced the warm tray of sweet potato muffins on her hip and knocked twice. No answer. She knocked again, firmer this time. A dishwasher named Sierra, barely out of high school, finally cracked it open. Her eyes widened when she saw Charlene. Good morning, Miss Charlene," she stammered. Charlene gave a gentle smile. "Hey, baby, I brought something fresh. You mind getting that for me?" Sierra opened the door wider but didn't move to take the tray. Declan said we're not supposed to let anyone in through the back anymore. Only deliveries." Charlene didn't flinch. "Deliveries? I'm not a stranger. I built this place with Simone." Sierra didn't respond, just stood there, awkward and unsure. Charlene stepped inside anyway. The scent of cinnamon and butter drifted behind her, but it was lost under the sterile chill of something else. Something colder than the air conditioning. She made her way toward the kitchen, nodding to a couple of cooks who mumbled hellos without making eye contact. Her usual spot by the prep station was occupied by someone she didn't recognize, a tall man with sleeve tattoos and noise-canceling headphones. He didn't even glance up. Charlene set the muffins on the counter. She was about to unwrap the foil when she heard his voice. Clear, clipped, rehearsed. "Mrs. Drayton?" She turned. Declan Frey stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Good morning," she said coolly. He didn't return the greeting. "I need to ask you to leave. This is a high-volume prep window. We can't have non-staff back here." Charlene blinked, once, slow. "Non-staff?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, as if that clarified everything. She glanced down at the muffins. "I've been bringing these since we opened. They go with the morning menu." "I understand," he replied. though his tone said otherwise. But Simone's asked that we keep operations streamlined, no family interruptions during service hours. Charlene's face didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. Interruptions? She asked. Her voice was quiet, calm, like water before it boils. He gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. We've got a rhythm going, and some of the staff, well, they feel they can't focus with extra people around. Charlene looked around. None of the staff met her gaze. Have I done anything to disrupt anyone's focus? She asked. There was a pause. Then Declan offered the kind of smirk that didn't belong in a kitchen. Simone's made it clear. She wants a certain professional distance. Charlene set her hands on the edge of the counter. Steady. I'm her mother, she said softly. Declan didn't blink. And she's the executive chef. She asked me to enforce boundaries. She took a breath. Not shaky, just measured. So I'm being asked to leave my own business, she said. Is that what's happening here? He straightened. It's not personal. It's policy. Charlene looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned toward the muffins and began wrapping the foil back over them. Who's going to walk me out? She asked without turning around. Declan hesitated, clearly not expecting her to yield so easily. He looked around, spotted a timid young busboy, Andres, who had only been there 2 weeks. Andres, he called. Could you walk Mrs. Drayton out, please? The boy's eyes darted between them. Sir? Declan waved him over. Now, please. Charlene didn't look at Andres. She just picked up the tray, straightened her shoulders, and walked past both of them. As she stepped through the dining area, someone called her name. It was an older woman near the window, one of the regulars. Miss Charlene, you leaving already? Charlene nodded. Just for now, sugar. But inside, something had cracked. Not loud, not messy. Just a clean, silent break. She stepped outside into the sunlight, the door shutting softly behind her. And for the first time since the restaurant opened, Charlene didn't stop at the bench outside to breathe. It was straight to her car, keys in hand, one thought burning hotter than the Carolina sun. Charlene closed the car door gently and placed the tray of muffins on the passenger seat like it was a newborn. Her hands rested in her lap for a moment, unmoving. The engine stayed off. She didn't need the air conditioning, didn't need the radio. She needed quiet, real quiet. She sat in the parked car behind the building she helped build, watching employees move in and out of the back door like ants in a hive. No one looked her way. No one even checked if she was still there. That told her everything she needed to know. 8 minutes passed. It wasn't sadness in her chest. It wasn't anger either. It was something sharper, something cold and deeply rooted. A line had been crossed. And it wasn't the first time. It was just the first time they made sure she felt it. Charlene reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She scrolled past messages from a cousin asking about church, past a reminder to refill her prescription, until she landed on the name she needed. Marla Penrose. She tapped the screen. Charlene, the woman answered, chipper and fast. You caught me mid-spin class. Everything okay? I need you to draft a letter, Charlene said, her voice steady. Marla paused. What kind of letter? Charlene didn't hesitate. I want to initiate a temporary shutdown for operational review. Full control reverts to primary shareholder until further notice. Marla cleared her throat. You're exercising your majority rights? Yes, Charlene said. 72% ownership is still mine. I think it's time everyone remembers that. Marla didn't argue. All right, I'll have something drawn up in an hour. Do you want me to notify Simone directly, or? I'll handle Simone, Charlene said, her voice firm. Just send it to the restaurant's HR inbox and CC Declan Frey. You got it. Charlene hung up and leaned back in the seat. Her fingers traced the seam of the steering wheel. There was no adrenaline, no racing heart. Just clarity. She reached for the tray again, uncovered the muffins and took one out. Still warm. She broke it in half and took a bite. Moist. Tender, just enough nutmeg. Then she rolled down the window, called out to a passerby. A young woman walking toward the strip mall turned her head. Hey, sweetie, Charlene said, holding up the tray. You hungry? The girl smiled. Always. Charlene handed her a muffin. Take one. Still fresh. The girl took a bite and froze mid-chew. Whoa, this is amazing. Charlene just smiled. Be well, baby. She watched the girl walk away, still chewing. Then she rolled the window back up, put the rest of the muffins in her lap, and stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror. There wasn't any sadness there, just a woman who knew her worth. Inside Hallberg House, nobody knew what was coming. Not Simone, not Declan, not the staff who had looked right past her. But they'd all learn, and they'd learn quick. Charlene didn't need to raise her voice or put on a show. She just needed to show them what happens when you try to erase the person who made the place possible. And as she put the car in gear and pulled out of the alley, Charlene wasn't driving away from the restaurant. She was driving straight toward the reckoning. At 4:32 p.m., the first HR email hit inboxes. Subject line, Immediate operational hold, Hallberg House. Most of the staff didn't even open it at first. They were busy cleaning up after lunch service, still half sweating and scrubbing the fryers. It wasn't until the second email, this one with staff termination notice in bold, that people started talking. Declan was in his office typing up next week's schedule when he saw the alerts. 3 of them, then 5, then 8. All from the legal team linked to Charlene Drayton's personal trust. He stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. "Can someone get Simone?" he called out. Simone was downstairs in the walk-in, checking citrus deliveries. She didn't even flinch when she saw him coming, until she caught the look on his face. "Declan, what?" "She pulled the rug out," he said. "Charlene, she's exercising shareholder authority. Effective immediately, we're shut down." Simone blinked. "She can't. She owns 72% of this place. She absolutely can." Simone stood frozen for a beat. Then she shoved past him, took the steps 2 at a time, and stormed through the kitchen. Staff were already whispering, heads tilted toward phones, confusion turning into panic. "Everybody pause what you're doing!" Simone shouted. "Please, just pause!" But it was too late. Sierra, the dishwasher, looked like she'd seen a ghost. "They said I'm terminated. What did I do?" Andres held up his phone. "Me too. I don't get it. I just walked someone out when I was told to. Who sent these?" Simone asked. "Drayton Holdings." Gage muttered, eyes glued to his screen. Simone's stomach dropped. Drayton Holdings. That was her mother's trust. She had set it up back when they signed the lease. Charlene had warned her to never forget who the actual owner was, just in case things ever go sideways. Simone had nodded back then, not really listening. Now, things had gone sideways. Fast. Declan turned to her. "What do you want me to do?" Simone didn't answer right away. She scanned the dining room. Empty now, but still carrying echoes of clinking plates, conversations, and her mother's laughter. She remembered the paint under her fingernails when they first opened. Remembered how Charlene had taken every photo of her to frame and put up on that wall near the bathroom. Remembered the sweet potato muffins. Now her staff was being fired, and she had no control over any of it. "What exactly does the hold mean?" she asked. Declan looked pale. "Effective immediately. Business operations are suspended for internal review. Staff found in breach of conduct have been terminated. That's almost everyone here." Simone pressed her hand to her forehead. And then she saw the tray. It was on the side table near the register. One of the muffins had a single bite missing. She stared at it like it was a message. Charlene had come in peace. They had answered with policy. And now this. This was the consequence. "I need to talk to her," Simone said quietly. Declan hesitated. "That might not be a good idea right now. I don't care." She turned and walked straight out the front door, her hands still sticky with citrus oil. Charlene wasn't hard to find. She was already sitting at her kitchen table back home, drinking ginger tea with a slice of lemon, when the knock came. "Come in," she said. The door opened. Simone stood there, tight-lipped, angry and exhausted. "You shut me down." Charlene nodded once. "Yes. You fired my staff." "No, I fired my staff. That was my staff. You just forgot." Simone stepped into the kitchen. "You humiliated me." Charlene's voice didn't rise. You embarrassed yourself. I just cleaned up after it. Simone dropped into a chair, hard. Mom, do you have any idea how this looks? What people are going to say? Charlene stirred her tea. People talk. But what matters is what you do next. Simone stared at her, defiant but rattled. You think I don't respect you? Charlene raised an eyebrow. I think you stopped remembering what respect looks like. And in that silence that followed, Simone wasn't the chef, the face of a brand, or the woman on TV. She was just a daughter, sitting across from the person who taught her how to stand tall in the first place. The kitchen clock ticked behind them, the old wooden one Charlene had moved with her from Durham. Simone remembered it from childhood, the way it made that soft clack at the top of every hour. Now it sounded louder than ever. Charlene didn't push. She never had. She just waited. Simone finally broke the silence. You blindsided me. Charlene shook her head. I warned you 12 times, quietly. I asked you to talk to your staff, to set the tone. You didn't listen. So now we're having a different kind of conversation. Simone sighed. You could have told me before you shut it all down, gave me a chance to fix it. Charlene looked her daughter dead in the eye. You had your chance. The moment I was walked out of the kitchen like a stranger. Simone looked down, her voice softer. I didn't know they were going to do that, but you allowed it to happen, Charlene replied. That's the part you keep missing. Simone ran her fingers through her hair. Mom, I wasn't trying to erase you. I was just trying to modernize things, make it efficient, professional. Charlene leaned forward. You think professionalism means forgetting where you come from? Simone's jaw tightened. No. Then explain why my name isn't even on the wall anymore. Simone blinked. What? Charlene's voice didn't tremble. The plaque. Founded by Charlene Drayton and Simone Hallberg. It used to hang near the register. It's gone. Simone swallowed. She hadn't even noticed. Charlene shook her head. It's not just about muffins and titles. It's about history. That place is made of stories, not systems. You started treating it like a brand, not a home. Simone stared out the window. A breeze moved the porch plants just slightly. I didn't mean to. I know, Charlene said. But that doesn't change what happened. Silence again. Simone spoke without turning her head. I thought I was building something for both of us. I didn't see myself cutting you out. You didn't have to see it, Charlene replied. You just had to feel it. And you stopped feeling the moment people started tagging you on Instagram. Simone winced. Charlene stood up and took 2 plates from the cupboard. She put a muffin on each and sat one in front of her daughter. Eat, she said. Simone looked down. You still made these after everything? I always make them, Charlene replied. Even when no one wants them. Simone picked up a piece and took a bite. Her throat caught. The flavor was exactly as she remembered from being a little girl. She hated how it made her want to cry. Charlene watched her. I'm not your employee, Simone. I'm your mother. I've been showing up since before you could spell your own name. Simone looked up, eyes glassy. I know. Charlene leaned back in her chair. You've got talent, no doubt. But don't let pride make you forget who helped you lay the first brick. Simone put the muffin down, wiped her hands. So what now? She asked. Is the place shut down forever? Charlene took a sip of her tea. No, just long enough to remind folks who built it. Then I'll reopen it. Different team, new manager. One that understands legacy doesn't get replaced. It gets honored. Simone looked wounded. You're cutting me out? Charlene's answer was slow, careful. I'm not cutting you out, but I am putting you on pause. You need time to figure out whether you're in this for the food or the fame. Simone didn't speak. She just nodded, barely, and looked back out the window. Charlene placed her hand over her daughter's. You can come home, when you're ready. But next time, don't make me fight for my own name in a place I helped build. And in that moment, something finally broke. Not the business, not the bond, but the illusion Simone had been clinging to. And once it broke, all that was left was truth. 2 weeks later, the doors to Hallberg House stayed shut. The outside looked the same awning, same logo etched in gold above the windows. But inside, it was a different story. The tables had been rearranged. The menu boards were gone. The walls were bare where framed headshots once hung. Only the smell of paint lingered. Charlene stood near the entrance, clipboard in hand, talking to a contractor about refinishing the floors. She wore comfortable shoes and a soft denim blouse rolled to the elbows. Her hair was wrapped in a cobalt scarf, and her tone was business. Clear, controlled. "No granite," she said firmly. "We're keeping the butcher block counters. That's history." The man nodded. "Understood." A delivery truck pulled up outside. She checked her watch. Produce. Right on time. She liked that. Inside the kitchen, 2 new hires were being shown around by an old friend of Charlene's, a retired pastry chef named Mavis DeLeon, whom Charlene had convinced to come back part-time. "Y'all don't mess up Miss Charlene's recipes?" Mavis told them, wagging a spoon. "She'll know even if you forget a 1/4 teaspoon of clove." One of the young cooks laughed nervously. Noted." Charlene overheard it as she stepped in. "We'll be doing trial runs all next week. You mess up now. That's when I want it to happen. No shame in mistakes, only in not learning." She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't trying to prove anything either. What she was doing now wasn't revenge. It was restoration. The staff who had allowed disrespect to happen without a word were gone. Declan never responded to the legal notice beyond a short email that read, "Received, understood." Simone hadn't returned to the restaurant since their talk, and Charlene hadn't pushed. She wasn't about chasing people who weren't ready to look back. The new team? They asked questions. They listened. Some didn't even know the cafe had a moment of viral fame. They just liked the food and believed in what Charlene called cooking with memory. She had also changed the name on the official documents, just slightly, from Hallberg House to Drayton and Hallberg. Simone hadn't called to ask about it, but Charlene didn't need permission to reclaim her name. She only needed ownership, and she already had that. Word started spreading that the cafe was reopening under new management. Loyal customers left notes taped to the door. "Hope to see Miss Charlene back behind the counter. Bring the muffins. My Saturdays haven't been the same." Charlene read each one. She didn't post on social media, didn't write a press release. She just kept working, reorganizing, scrubbing pans, making lists. When she removed the last piece of branded signage with Simone's solo name on it, she didn't do it with spite. She folded it up carefully and placed it in a cardboard box labeled Office, Archive, because she wasn't erasing her daughter. She was making space for both of them. Mavis tapped her shoulder while she was labeling spice jars. "You sure you want to do this alone?" she asked. Charlene smiled. "I'm not alone. I've got cinnamon, nutmeg, and a whole community waiting on my muffins." Mavis laughed. "And a new crew watching your every move." Charlene looked around at the young cooks slicing onions and stirring roux. "Good, that's how they learn." She wiped her hands on a towel, walked into the dining area, and stood where the plaque used to hang. A new one had arrived just that morning. She opened the box and pulled it out, brushed off the corners, and read the engraving aloud to herself. "Built by memory. Sustained by love. Drayton and Hallberg." She smiled. She drilled the new plaque into the wall with her own hands. It was even, centered, and shining. And just as she stepped back to admire it, a familiar voice called out behind her, one she hadn't expected to hear again. "Didn't think you'd still be drilling things into walls yourself?" Charlene turned slowly. Simone stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. But it wasn't defiance this time. It was hesitation. Humility. Maybe even a little shame. Charlene said nothing for a moment, just looked her daughter up and down. She wasn't in chef whites. She wasn't holding a clipboard. Just jeans and a plain t-shirt. Simple. Grounded. The version of her that Charlene hadn't seen in a long time. "You come to eat, or you come to talk?" Charlene asked. "Both," Simone replied, stepping inside. "I figured it was time." Charlene nodded toward a nearby table. "Sit, muffins are in the back." Simone walked slowly, taking in the changes. The clean walls, the new staff in the kitchen, the smell of cinnamon, and something simmering. Smoked turkey, maybe. It felt different, but still familiar. Like home after someone rearranged the furniture. Charlene came back with 2 plates, placed one in front of Simone, then sat across from her. Simone took a bite. She chewed slowly, eyes never leaving the plate. "They're still warm," she said. "They always are when they're made with care," Charlene said. Her tone wasn't smug, just honest. They sat in silence, a beat longer than comfortable. Simone cleared her throat. "I've been thinking." Charlene raised an eyebrow. "That's good. Thinking's how we got here. It's also how we move forward." Simone put the muffin down. "I messed up, I know that. I let other people set the tone. I thought growth meant letting go of the old stuff, but I didn't realize I was letting go of you." Charlene leaned back. "You weren't the first to forget your roots when the branches started reaching higher. Won't be the last." "But it was still my responsibility," Simone added, softer this time. "I never should have let them treat you like you were in the way. You were the way." Charlene looked at her carefully, not ready to fall into sentiment too fast. "Words are one thing, baby. You know better than anyone. Presentation matters. But so does the work behind it." Simone nodded. "I know. That's why I'm not asking for my job back." That surprised Charlene. "No? I think I need to step away for real this time. I've been doing some thinking outside the kitchen, volunteering actually, at a food program near Columbia Heights. It's small, humble, no cameras, just folks who need warm meals." Charlene studied her daughter. The pride was there, but quiet, earned. "I came to ask if you'd let me use one of the old recipes," Simone continued. "The red beans and rice. I want to serve it at the program." Charlene didn't answer right away. She just broke off a piece of her own muffin and chewed it slowly. Then she smiled, small but sure. "Those beans were your great-grandmother's," she said. "She fed half of Edgefield with them before you were even born. I think she'd be proud to see 'em feeding people again." Simone's eyes glistened. "Thank you." Charlene stood up, picked up both plates, and walked them back behind the counter. When she returned, she didn't sit down. "I'm reopening on Tuesday," she said. "Soft opening, no press, just the regulars." Simone stood too. "I won't get in your way." Charlene tilted her head. "You were never in my way, Simone. You just stopped walking beside me." Simone nodded slowly, then turned to leave. But before she reached the door, Charlene called after her. "You still have a key?" Simone looked down at her purse, then back at her mother. "Yeah." Charlene gave the slightest smile. "Don't lose it. You might need it again." Simone smiled too. "I'll keep it close." And as the door closed gently behind her, Charlene didn't feel like she'd won anything. She just felt something settle. Something that had been crooked for too long, finally standing straight again. Tuesday morning came with overcast skies and a breeze that carried the scent of coffee, cinnamon, and something good about to happen. Charlene arrived before sunrise. The street was quiet, but the lights inside Drayton and Hallberg glowed warm against the glass. She unlocked the front door herself. No fanfare, no balloons, just muscle memory and quiet focus. By 7:15, a small line had formed outside. Not the influencer crowd, not the weekend foodies with their tripods, just familiar faces. People who remembered when the chairs still wobbled and the sweet tea came in mismatched mason jars. Mavis was already in the kitchen, humming something old and steady while setting up the biscuit tray. "You ready?" she asked, adjusting her apron. Charlene buttoned the top of her blouse. "Been ready, just had to remind a few folks." The first customers came in with soft smiles and loud greetings. "There she is. Miss Charlene, you look good." "You back for good now?" Charlene grinned as she poured coffee and slid warm plates across the counter. "I ain't never left," she said. "Just been replanting the roots." The young staff moved smoothly, each step echoing the tone Charlene had re-established. Respectful, calm, precise. Nobody was rushing. Nobody barked orders. It wasn't perfect, but it felt right. Around 9:30, a woman in a navy head wrap and a well-loved trench coat stepped inside, carrying a small girl with tight braids and bright eyes. "I heard the muffins were back," she said, catching Charlene's eye. Charlene smiled. "They never left. Just been resting." She handed over two, warm and wrapped in parchment. The little girl took one bite and danced in place. That was worth more than any review Simone had ever chased. Later that afternoon, Simone appeared again, quietly, through the side door. She didn't say much, just helped Mavis wipe down the prep station and stacked clean plates. Charlene didn't stop her. She just said, "There's still extra gloves in the drawer. If you're going to be back here, use them." Simone smiled and nodded. She didn't need a lecture. The moment was permission enough. By closing time, the register drawer was full. The guest book was covered in scribbles and signatures, and Charlene was tired, but not drained. It was the good kind of tired, the kind that lets you know the work meant something. She turned the sign to closed, locked the door, and stood for a moment staring out at the sidewalk where her journey had both begun and nearly derailed. "You good?" Mavis asked from behind her, tossing a dish towel over her shoulder. Charlene exhaled through her nose. "I'm better than I've been in a long time." She walked back into the kitchen, turned off the burners, and laid her palms flat on the prep table. Like a prayer, like a memory. She thought of all the women in her family who never got to run their own place. Thought of all the times she held her tongue for the sake of peace. And how, when the line was crossed, she didn't shout or storm. She corrected the course. Not just for herself. For Simone. For the staff. For the next young woman who walks into a kitchen thinking legacy is just a name on paper. It isn't. Legacy is how you're treated when no one's watching. Legacy is whether your name still carries weight when you're not in the room. Legacy is standing your ground, not to block anyone else's path, but to remind them who cleared it in the first place. And that's exactly what Charlene Drayton did. The following Saturday morning, Drayton and Halberg was in full swing. The tables filled up early. Families, old neighbors, students from Benedict College, even a retired professor who used to grade Simone's undergrad essays. The air smelled of spiced yams, browned butter, and hot cakes crisp around the edges. Charlene stood behind the counter, not in the back, not hidden, right in the heart of it all. No longer the silent force propping things up, but the woman everyone acknowledged with a smile or a soft nod as they passed by. She didn't need to remind anyone who she was anymore. They already knew. On the far wall, under the new plaque, a photo hung in a simple wood frame. A black and white shot of Charlene and her grandmother from the 70s, standing over a pot of gumbo in a tiny kitchen in Edgefield, South Carolina. Underneath it, a caption engraved on a brass plate read, "Our recipes begin with the women who fed us long before we could name our hunger." Mid-morning, Simone came in with a notebook in one hand and 2 large paper bags in the other. Charlene looked up. "You bring me more spices I didn't ask for?" Simone chuckled. "No. Donations for the food program. I told them you'd help make something stretch." Charlene waved her over. "Good, you can help peel." They worked side by side for nearly an hour, barely talking, but it wasn't tense. It was easy. They were busy doing what they were always meant to do together. A few feet away, Mavis was giving a lesson to one of the young cooks. "See how she chops the parsley? Clean, confident. That's not just muscle memory. That's soul memory." Charlene overheard and shook her head with a soft smile. "Don't go filling their heads with poetry, Mavis. Let 'em learn to keep the station clean first." Mavis laughed. "You clean, I'll talk pretty." The 2 women chuckled, and even Simone laughed, her hands still covered in carrot shavings. Later, during the lull between breakfast and lunch, Charlene stepped out to the sidewalk. She liked watching from outside sometimes, seeing the movement through the windows like a living thing. She stood beside the bench where she used to sit after early prep shifts. That same bench where she'd once sat with humiliation burning in her chest. Now? That fire was something different. Warm, controlled, purposeful. A young woman walking by stopped. "Excuse me," she said. "Is this your place?" Charlene turned to her. "It is. I'm visiting from Alabama. My cousin told me I had to come here. Said the muffins changed her life." Charlene raised an eyebrow, amused. "That's a mighty big claim for a muffin." The girl smiled. She said it tasted like someone had forgiven her. Charlene didn't say anything for a second. Then she nodded once. "Tell your cousin I said thank you, and that forgiveness tastes better warm." She went back inside. That evening, As the last tables cleared and chairs were lifted onto tabletops, Simone stayed behind to help mop. Charlene didn't ask her to, she just did it. The rhythm of their work was different now. No one was rushing to prove anything. "I was thinking," Simone said as she wrung out the mop, "maybe we do a Sunday supper once a month. Something less polished, more stories, fewer phones, just food and people." Charlene nodded slowly. "That could work." Simone glanced at her. "You'd run it?" Charlene smiled. "I already do." They both laughed. This time without tension, without ego. Just two women connected by blood, mistakes, and the shared understanding that respect wasn't a handout. It was earned, re-earned, and protected. As they turned off the lights and locked up, the street outside was quiet. The kind of quiet Charlene appreciated, earned at the end of a long day. Simone reached for the door key but paused. "You sure I should still have this?" Charlene looked at her. "It was never about the key, baby. It's about how you carry it." Simone pocketed it carefully. And as they walked toward the parking lot together, no titles, no cameras, just mother and daughter. Charlene knew that while recipes could be copied and menus could change, the real legacy was how you made people feel. And that lasted. Thanks for watching. If this story made you feel something, share it. Respect your roots, protect what you've built, and don't forget who taught you how to hold the spoon. Subscribe for more real stories that matter.